call to order the meeting of Richmond City Council for Monday, May 25th, 2020. May I have a motion on the minutes?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, errors, omissions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. There are no agenda additions or deletions. So may I have a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on agenda items? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We are very pleased to welcome former councillor Linda Barnes, who just couldn't wait to come back and talk to us. So, Linda is our sole delegate. You know the rules there, Linda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, it's Linda Barnes, 4551 Gary Street here in Richmond. And I am the chairperson of the Richmond Arts Coalition. And it's as that I address you tonight. And so I had sent in an email letter to you earlier today.
This is on the Richmond Maritime Festival.
Sorry, yes, item number 11.
Yep.
And it's on the Maritime Festival, thank you. And basically what we're hoping for is that council will approve the Maritime Festival this afternoon, option number 3. And I just wanted to detail a little bit about what our plans are, because I know it's different than what it normally would be. And I wanted to assure you that we would be doing this in the safest possible way, given the current rules of the pandemic when this does occur. And I just wanted to say that so far our plans include to be held over a period not to exceed 29 days. So it would be more than one weekend. A good portion of the arts component would be virtual performances, and it only include in-person performances and installations as can be done safely according to the health and regulations of the time. And we would use the Britannia site and its maritime history as much as possible in our virtual performances. And I just wanted you to know that if council chooses to cancel the Maritime Festival, that we would then lose our grant and would have to be returned the $65,000. We have spoken also with the Britannia Shipyards, Heritage Shipyard Society, and they concur with this, and I know have sent you in a letter as well, detailing their needs, which include not only the Providence, but hopefully funding to support the waterfront installations, boats, vessels that could come in and sort of augment the festival along the waterfront in a very safe manner. So I'm also open to any questions that council may have.
Now, you say option 3, so I take it that it's important that there be something, an event called the Richmond Maritime Festival that would then form the basis of what you're doing. So you need Richmond Maritime Festival.
Correct.
So then the question is, if that is supported, the question is whether we devote the budget, which would be the proposed budget, $28,000 to it, or not devote any budget to it. Now, I take it you're talking about wanting the budget.
Yes.
Okay. And that would enhance what you're doing either with the invitation to the boats or other little things.
Absolutely.
All right. We have a question from Councillor Steeves and then one from Councillor McPhail.
Yes, this afternoon we approved patio seating on sidewalks if we can work it out, and primarily probably in Stevenson in front of restaurants. And I guess the question I've got, it was on the 6 o'clock news tonight. It was quite fascinating. They showed a park in San Francisco where family after family after family were at the park, and they actually had they had circles on the parkland that people were delegated to sit in that circle with their family. So I'm just wondering what you're thinking about in terms of people coming to the event. Would we set up like a patio? Would we set up tables and chairs for groupings, similar to what the restaurants would have, or would we have people sitting on the grass if you had a concert or a virtual concert?
I had not honestly, through the Councillor Steves, I had not honestly considered the circles and the family, but those are the kinds of innovative ideas that we would certainly be looking at doing. We want to make it, as you said, for families, for local people. The whole idea that people are not going to be traveling too far this year. We want to make it available, for people to have a good time safely. And so the circles, to me, sound like a good idea, and we would definitely consider those.
Yeah, I'd suggest you watch the Global News tonight. It was on Global, and they were comparing the mobs that were gathered in the parks this weekend in Ontario, compared to the orderly enjoying of the parks as the parks all opened in San Francisco. The other question I've got in terms of your virtual entertainment, would you have live entertainment on a stage and film that would go on, that people could watch it at home, or would it all be online and just showing a screen?
Again, through the Councillor Steves, at this point we're looking some of each. Virtual would be, we're hoping to film it as much as possible on site, so it would be filmed as much as possible at Britannia. But we are hoping to have some on-site performances. Again, it would be depending on the safety issues of the day. But given that the fact that we're going to be, or we're looking to do it over a period of time, not all on one weekend, but a weekend apart, I think we can do some face-to-face performances safely.
The final question, in terms of distancing, would you see city bylaw people managing the distancing to make sure that people sat in the circles or kept their distances apart, or would there be volunteers or both? Because in the past we've had volunteers allowing people down to the docks, but when there's a certain number, they stop them from going down to the boats, and it's one-way traffic. It's down through the Britannia shipyard and out through the seine loft. So we've had volunteers doing that. How do you see that? Would it be volunteers, or would we require bylaw staff?
To be honest, again, through the Mayor to Councillor Steves, we haven't gotten to that level of detail as yet. The issue of volunteers, I mean, we have, as you said, traditionally used volunteers, but again, we would have to look to the city and to the health and safety aspect to see if that's feasible. But definitely it would be monitored in some fashion, and we would hope that the city would continue their efforts, either Bylaws or the pool noodle people, or whatever the city has done. But those are good ideas. Thank you.
All right, Linda.
Ms. Barnes, well, thank you for coming tonight. Well, the artist community has been very badly hit as well. Earlier we were talking about the business community, but we know the arts and culture community as well has been very badly hit by the COVID-19 situation. Can you tell me how many artists that your grant would support?
Thank you for that question. Last year it supported over 145 individual artists, and with that there were several groups as well that it covered, and so probably more in the essence of around at least 200, if not more. And so again this year we've been successful in having a larger grant, and so we would be looking to support as many, particularly local artists, as we can.
And just a follow-up to that, how many years has RAC been applied for this grant and, worked with the city and Britannia Heritage putting on the Maritime Festival?
Yes, again, through to Councillor McPhail, we've been working, I believe it's 15 years with the city, and we've had something over the years donated to over $250,000 in grant revenue to the city, particularly focused on the arts communities. And so we and council have worked very hard to ensure that this festival is delivered and families look forward to it. And so I would hope to continue that, as I said, perhaps in doing some new ways, but successful.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Harold, you still got your hand up there. I've got Carol, then Jack, and Bill. Carol?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Councillor Barnes, for coming forward. It's always nice to hear from you. My question, some of it might be for staff, but some of it is definitely for you. When we have a lot of people that come to a council meeting, we'll often film it and it'll be live in another room. Do you envision limiting the attendance of the Britannia Shipyards area to a very low amount of people? And then should more people show up, that have like a screen or something available so people can see what's going on inside the shipyard, outside?
Again, that's through the mayor to Councillor Day. Again, that's a level of detail that we had not gotten to, but certainly we would be limiting access and numbers for sure. Exactly how we would be able to view that, I honestly can't answer that at the moment. I wouldn't want to say that we would have screens available because I think they're fairly expensive.
Okay, and thank you to the chair. Just one other question. The timetable is clearly going to have to be different than what it normally would be. So you said it won't be more than 29 days, but when do you think it would start? I know it's hard to say, but if you had to guess when it would start and potentially end.
Thanks. And again, through the mayor, we've been bantering around a number of dates. Nothing obviously has been landed on, but it will not be the traditional third week in July. It's just not possible to get things moving by then. We're probably looking more well into August. But again, those are a bit up in the air, but most likely not toward the end of August.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Jack?
Okay, well, actually, you partly answered my question, but it's about the date. Now, usually you do this in the summertime,
right,
but we don't know when will the provincial government loosen up the ban on crowds, right? So if they would lift that kind of prohibition in September, so I mean, in a way, are you being tied to a certain time for the event, or can you say, yeah, you can be flexible, it can be in September or October, if at that time the prohibition is being lifted? Would be, how flexible are you in terms of the date?
Thank you again, and through the mayor. Personally, I don't believe that we will wait to hear the sort of total lifting of the gathering ban, if you will. I think if council approves this, we would work with staff. Obviously, the weather still plays a factor in this, whether it's going to be virtual or some of it virtual and some of it face-to-face. Some of it will depend on we put out, if council does approve the $28,000 for vessel recruitment, I think within, a few weeks, staff will know whether we've got a big uptake on that and what the timing is of that. So I think it will depend a lot more on availability as opposed to the actual rules of the day. And we'll simply work with whatever rules that are there on the dates that are chosen. So I don't know if that answers specifically. It's kind of.
And my second question is your funding tied up with any requirement to meet certain number of participants in your program? So do they require you to have, at least certain amount of people attending so that you can get funding? Otherwise, you won't. Is it being tied to a certain number of people,
Yeah.
the participants?
Again, through the mayor, normally, obviously, Canadian Heritage is our grant funder, and normally, obviously they want to help reach the most that we can. And as Councillor McPhail said, a lot of this is geared toward supporting artists. But this year, given the outstanding issues, they have been very, wouldn't say lenient, but they've really worked with the people that have applied for grants to make it happen. So I don't believe that would be a real issue. I think they would just want to reach as many as they can, given the circumstances and the safety constraints of the time.
So I just want to say that I'm very supportive of the program that you provided, and I think if you can do it right, it can be the biggest event ever, because in the past people have to go physically to the place, right? And right now they can stay home, and if we can set up the whole system right, it can be the biggest event for the city, and that could be a huge success.
I'm thinking as well. Thank you.
All right, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Thanks for coming forward again and being the matriarch of art in the city. I have a couple of questions and a couple of realistic ones if I can. From what I read, you need an event called the Richmond Maritime Festival. Whether we can get boats or not is another issue, so long as you can satisfy the requirements of Heritage Canada. Is that not the case?
The bottom line, yes.
But there will be the Providence.
If not, we already have one boat, so that would satisfy the need, if you wish, for your grant. Because I see this as two separate things. One, to continue to support the arts, which we should do on it. Now, the other question I had is 3 or 4 of them actually. You say you're going to run it over 29 days. Level 4 and 5, or phase 4 and 5 from the province is not going to come into existence until at least August the 3rd. Is that what will that do for you between now and then? Can you put a program together and submit it, or do you have to wait till things are lifted?
Thank you, Councillor McNulty. Through the mayor, no, we would not have to wait. As I said to Councillor Au, I think in working with the city, we'll look at, as you suggested, the different phases that are coming forward, and we will attempt to pick a date that works, if you will, both for the city and to satisfy, obviously, our grant. But we wouldn't be waiting for a particular phase but we would look for something that is workable.
Have you thought through, Councillor Steves alluded to it, the United States is a mess right now, Toronto is a mess, and not respecting our health authorities that tell us no groups are bigger than 50 at the moment, keep your distances, and they say that those things will always be in for the future unless we can prevent a second wave. Are you capable of doing that, or would the city have to fund that? Obviously, your grant, you said, was for the artists. Who would pay for that? Because we can't ask volunteers to push people around. We know what's happened at Gary Point every Friday, Saturday, Sunday already, with not a parking spot to be had. Volunteers, they just tell you to shove off. So I guess my question is, what kind of realistic setup can we expect in order to make this successful? Because we want to make it successful.
Thank you, Councillor McNulty, again through the mayor. Again, these are logistics that, I can't specifically answer exactly what we will do, except to guarantee that we will do it in a safe manner. And we would certainly, as you said, we would not want the big crowds that traditionally have come for a tall ship event or, you know, the Kiowa Maru event, those sorts of things. So we would definitely be looking to scale it to a much more local group and keep the foot traffic down.
I would maintain that if you have this event, it will be an overwhelming success. You'll have thousands there. Could you spread it out along the waterfront and not just have it Britannia, Imperial Landing, etc., all the way to Gary Point? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, it's something you might consider as opposed to having a one event to follow the rules of our health authorities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And we'll get to that in due course. May I have a motion to rise and report?
So moved.
All right. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Bill, your hand is still up there.
All right.
There you go. Okay. Brings us to the consent agenda. We have receipt of committee minutes, letter for liquor licensing, statement against racism related to the COVID-19 pandemic, 2019 Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program and Corporate Carbon Neutral Progress Report, and finally, the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund. May I have a motion to adopt those by consent?
So moved.
That's moved and seconded. I've got Carol Day. Go ahead, Carol. Then Michael Wolf.
Yeah, thank you. I'll be supporting everything on the consent agenda. And I just wanted to speak to a few things. Number 7 is the letter for licensing. I'm really pleased that we're writing to the province to ask them to expedite a low-cost process for liquor licensing, given that we're going to be moving a lot of our businesses outside, and that means using patios. So I think this is timely, and I think we have great support from the province on this. Number 8 is a statement against racism related to COVID-19. I think it's unbelievably sad what's happening in our community, and not just here, but around the world. And I'm really glad that we decided to make this statement, because I think it speaks to what we really are all about. And, you know, if we go back to the beginning, you know, Richmond didn't have any cases, and now they were still well below the average. So the fact that there is racism is concerning, but I do feel that as people become more aware of how this is unfolded, they'll also realize that this is a worldwide problem, not an Asian problem. And I wanted to also speak to the Climate Action Review Incentive Program. You know, I'm really excited about, even during this pandemic, we're doing everything we can to make the world a better place, and certainly you know, recognize the things that we're doing as a community with the district energy and whatnot. And if we've learned anything during COVID-19, is that we have to reduce our carbon footprint. So I'm really pleased about that. And I thank staff for an excellent report. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to staff, I have a question related to, actually, I'm not sure if there is a question to staff or if there's a question to council. But for item number 8, the statement against racism, in many other situations, I've noticed when a municipality has a statement against hate or something along those lines, they post it on the website, and then they follow it with a list of either like coalition members or endorsers of the statement. And I know since the initial draft of the statement was made and went public, we have received some correspondence from individuals and some individuals who represent large groups of Richmond residents. So my question for this item is, where is this statement going to go? And could we be linking with the Richmond Intercultural Advisory Committee to see if their stakeholders, their composition of groups could assist us with reaching out into the networks to try and get others aware of the statement and also to support the statement?
Well, we can post it on the website. I'd ask staff, would there be liaison with the Intercultural Advisory Committee on this? Anyone want to venture on that one?
Your Worship, it's Joe. We can certainly liaise with the Intercultural Advisory Committee to try to get a broader awareness and also to receive feedback.
All right.
Terrific.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. I have one other comment, or sorry, one other item I'd like to comment on, and that would be item number 9, the Climate Action Revenue Incentive Program. So I was able to ask a number of questions at committee and over email, and I continue to find more questions. But I'll just point out a couple of key things. First off, I didn't catch this before. There was a date wrong, and I didn't advise it to the staff. But I believe it's wrong. So on page 49, the very bottom heading says corporate water and wastewater actions proposed for 2019. I think that should be proposed for 2020. Sorry, I missed to get that to you earlier, but maybe that's one thing. I thank staff for giving us the memo on the carbon offsets, also known as credits. And I'll look forward to some discussion with staff on more ways that we can find sources of carbon offsets. I kind of find it surprising that the household organics programs that we have every year, we get, it's a source of these additional credits where I think it would kind of be built in eventually, like some of these other things are. So it'd be great if we could stay on top of new sources for that. So that's great. I think the anti-idling newsletters that go out to staff are great. I've definitely seen a reduction in city vehicles idling. I did see one a couple days ago. So, but I'm glad that's an item that's going to continue, or a newsletter that's going to continue to get out to staff. There's a number of exciting things. I think the public looking into the list of proposed actions, it's not all clear to me that these are referrals of council. I think many of them are innovations of staff, and I thank them for having things such as the marine plastics awareness and ways to reduce plastic litter enrichment. I think the commercial recycling and capping our dumpsters with a lock will go a long way. I don't know where that would fit in with this, but I think there's a number of things our staff are already aware of. I just don't see how they all fit in here. So I'll just end with the comments that I think there's many partnerships we can have under the adaptations section, which is at the end. So the next version of this in a year from now, hopefully we can include more of the partnerships. And then finally, the proposals. This is under section 10. It doesn't give for this year, because probably some of them are big long-term proposals. But yeah, I'm sure we have a number of innovative actions that will come out of that in years to come. So I'm really supportive of everything else on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Jack?
Just want to comment on item 8, a statement against racism related to the COVID-19 pandemic. I think everybody knows that hate crime or racism is on the rise. Just a few days ago, the Vancouver police said that there's 7 times more cases in their city in comparison to the previous year. And also in Richmond, we have a few cases, but I can say that there are more cases not being reported. And as a person with more contact with the Chinese community, I can tell you that over the last 3 weeks, I received at least calls or emails from 30 people. And I can say that the level of anxiety and fear has never been higher before. It's a very high level of anxiety, and many people are worried about their safety. And I've also received reports from people who are not Chinese, but they're also the visible minorities. They felt that they're also being targeted. Someone said that, the racism is always there, nothing new, but I think this is new because this is very closely related to the pandemic, and I think somehow some people use that as an excuse for hate crime or racist behavior. And I think this statement itself is not going to do very much, but this is a good starting point. It makes a stand, and I think we can use that for further programs or other actions that we can take, either as a city or the RCMP can do more. I really like the idea, the suggestion by Councillor Wu, that we send this to the Intercultural Advisory Committee. But I would like also to suggest that perhaps we can send this out to the other mayors in the well, if not in the whole province, we can send it out to all the cities in Metro Vancouver, so that, other cities can consider taking a similar stand. I know that the Burnaby City Council is going to consider something similar in one of the working committees. So I think if we can send this out to all these cities, at least in the Lower Mainland, I think that would be very helpful. So I propose that we send.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment, that we send that letter to the mayors in the Metro Vancouver region, unless someone's got an objection to that. All right, so it's done. Michael, your hand is still up. And Bill McNulty.
Your Worship, I just want to echo the comments in terms of our climate action program. I want to thank staff for itemizing everything and putting it all together. Yes, each year we get our credits and what have you, and we talk about ourselves being a leader. But I think we need to publish this and put it on our website, Your Worship, to show the people, because we didn't do this alone. We did with policies and what have you, but we need to show progress and results to the citizens of Richmond of what we've got to encourage them so that we can even do better. And I think there's a lot of statements there that are very powerful, and I think it needs to get out there. And I hope you and Councillor Steves will take this to Metro Vancouver to put it on the table from our point of view, to show that they need to work together, because we can work together with them to even get better results. As we know, the carbon footprint with what we're going through now is showing a lot less carbon in the air and what have you, and I think it's a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, it's not the way to have to keep the world a better place in which to live. I just would like to make a comment and support the comments on the statement on racism number 8. I'd like us to say, and I thought it was going to say, the City of Richmond statement on racism and violence. The word violence has got left off there, Your Worship. I think that related to COVID pandemic, but also a statement that we want for our policies. And I agree with what has been already said. To consult Intercultural Advisory, we need to put this on our website on a page of its own. And it needs to be there. This is our statement. It needs to be powerful. It needs to be brought out. Circulating it to Metro Vancouver and others is good, but we must constantly speak out against racism, constantly speak out and intervene if we see it. And from that point of view, having worked with this racism and violence in the schools myself all the year, we need to make sure the school board gets it, and other groups within our community. We said it, there's no place on it for in society, and there isn't. We must stand together, but we also must be advocates against racism and violence. And I'd like to see that it's a City of Richmond statement, as opposed to, if you wish, Your Worship, on page 3 of our agenda, it just says a statement against Richmond. It's Richmond's statement against it, and I think we need to speak very strongly on this, and I feel very passionate about it, and understand where people are coming from, because I've worked with many clients who have experienced it. So I thought that was coming from committee to this, but I will accept this, but I'm hoping we can put the title on it. Make sure it's ours, and it's citizens, and the citizens of Richmond own this, and hopefully will abide by it.
All right, so I'll take it as a friendly, unless someone's got an objection, that it'll be Richmond's statement against racism and violence related to the COVID, et cetera, pandemic. And staff also have heard the directions in terms of putting it onto the website, both the item about racism and the climate action. Let's see, we already put on the letter going to the mayors of the Metro Vancouver region. All right, Bill, your hand is still up. So with that, I'm going to call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, and Bill, your microphone is still on. We could mute that. Okay, that brings us to number 11, which is what the delegation was referring to about the city events program. And what I propose to do is to get the motions on the floor. First of all, we'll exclude the Richmond Maritime Festival because there is a certain amount of discussion and possible controversy there. So I'm just going to read out the first part of the motion, which deals with everything except the Richmond Maritime Festival. It would read that aside from the Richmond Maritime Festival, number one, the revised city event program 2020 and budget is outlined in table 1 of the staff report titled Revised City Event Program 2020, dated April 20, 2020, from the Director of Arts, Culture, and Heritage Services be approved. And secondly, that the sum of $780,000 be returned to the rate stabilization account after payment of $17,000 for the Providence contract and an increase to $20,000 for farm markets, and I would so move. So that's moved and seconded, so it's on the floor. Council, I think, is quite familiar. We've negotiated or discussed at some great length about all this. Basically, all the major events are either being significantly reduced or canceled altogether. It's too bad that the COVID-19 has done this to us. And so, frankly, from my point of view, I don't see any alternative to it. And I just want to commend staff for having worked to see what we could feasibly do. But that, of all these events, is precious little. So let's see now. So that motion is on the floor. Remember, it's not Richmond Maritime Festival. We'll get to that in a minute. So I've got Councillor Day wanting to speak.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Yeah, and I voted against this in committee because I felt that we needed to be a little more flexible on some of the things that we could be flexible on. So I thank you very much for separating the issues because obviously the World Festival can't happen. It's just too big of an event. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't do a brand new Made in Richmond version of the Maritime Festival, as we heard earlier from the speakers. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any other comments or questions on the major events exclusive of the Richmond Maritime Festival? Okay, I'll call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Then the second part of it is the Richmond Maritime Festival. And we've heard from the delegation as to the importance of that for the Richmond Arts Coalition and what they have planned and the grant that they have received. So what I'm going to do is I'll put on the floor a motion for the full deal. So the motion would be that the Richmond Maritime Festival program and budget in the sum of $28,000 be approved as set out in the staff report, which we have mentioned, from the Director of Arts, Culture, and Heritage Services, and I would so move.
Second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded. I just stress, we'll get the comments of everybody as to how they see the situation, but the motion that's on the floor is that we would have something called the Richmond Maritime Festival. There would be a budget of $28,000 for it for the items that the delegation this evening talked about in the manner that the delegation talked about it. And this is normally you've got a budget, city-approved funding of $250,000. So we're taking $45,000 we paid for the Providence, and then there's $28,000 left to be devoted to the item. So we'll start with Councillor Liu, then Councillor Steeves.
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting this. I think you know, it's important to do something, especially something that really surrounds our heritage and is an opportunity to get some people out. And granted, we can't get as many people out as we normally would, but I'm really confident with the group and with staff being able to work together to be able to do something that'll be safe, that'll be family friendly, that'll still be meet all the criteria that's important. So whether or not they have to, you know, have some ticketing process or something else to, or various other methods, I think they're going to be able to do something. I know I've been out to this festival a number of times with my family, and I've seen numerous other families there with their strollers and their kids and being able to get out to something. And I know people haven't been able to get out to things. And while not everyone will be able to attend it, clearly, it's just one more thing that it creates an option for people. And I think we need that. I think we need fun, family-oriented things that celebrate our culture and that are done here. And I think as we slowly open up, this is one of those things that we'll be able to keep as a bite-sized thing and have a successful event. Thank you.
All right, I've got Harold, Kelly, Linda, Bill, and Jack. So Harold?
Thank you. Definitely support it. I think that when we talked this afternoon about the patios at the restaurants, that's something that older folks will do. You can't really take your little kids or your grandchildren there to a restaurant, or I guess you could, but it's not exactly an outing. And this gives families an opportunity to get out and get some fresh air and enjoy our waterfront. I think a lot of it can be handled by our bylaw officers, and I'm thinking in terms of an event being held at Britannia Shipyard, 1 or 2 weekends or more, and you could put a stage up and have singers. When we had the Maritime Festival the last time, most of the stage shows only had about 100 people watching at a time, and you could limit it to 50. We had sometimes 2 shows going at the same time. At one occasion, we had the Navy bring their Navy ships in down at the Imperial Landing, and they had a Navy band at the up on the dike by the landing. We had buskers along the dike. We had at the Maritime Festival, we had another group of singers near the parking lot by the Killnet loft, and there only 20 or 30 people were located. So I think it can be done. We might have to put up snow fence or something like that, but we do have bylaw officers that can be working in those days and keep make sure people are distanced. It's very difficult to do when you've got thousands of people milling about in the park, but if you have some way of controlling how many people come in, that I think it can be done. In terms of the boats themselves, we always did have the people that were going to see the boats going one way. They go in the shipyard, walk along the dock, see the boats, and come up through the seine loft and go out that way. So I think that would work. We're not talking about huge boats. I just wanted to share one picture of this. I'll show. This is what we did a couple of years ago. These were the vessels we had. The top one is the Forest Service vessels that come in. They had a rendezvous, half a dozen vessels.
Higher, Harold. Higher up. There you go. There you go.
Okay, no, that one's that was the missionary boats. And so we had missionary boats, and then this one was the forest vessels that were this one. And both times those boats, when you went down to the docks, there was only 10 or 15 people on the float at a time. So it wasn't great crowds, but people can be monitored going down, and they would visit the boats and wander back up, see some music and singing on the stage, at whether it's a main stage or a couple of other stages along the dike. And it could well be that there's some crafts that can be done. Basically, on the Maritime Festival, generally, we've had kids doing paintings and things like that. I'm not sure what can be done, but I'm sure some of them can be done that are not going to have too many kids at the same place at the same time. So I think it can be done, and I think we really need to do something for our community instead of saying stay home and basically, you know, suck on your thumb, because people are getting pretty tired of staying home, and by that time I think the families are going to be very tired of staying home. So if we can organize some kind of activities that are safe and interesting, then I think we should do it.
All right, thank you. Kelly?
Thanks very much. I would like to make a motion to remove the funding portion of the Maritime Festival, but to continue to allow it to run with in-house services with the City of Richmond.
That would be in order, but what I would ask to do is, can we just get through comments, and then I'll come back to you, and we'll ask for that amendment?
Shall I make my comments now?
I would suggest so, yeah.
Okay. Basically, what we're looking at is $28,000 from the city to entertain a maximum of 50 people at a time over a period of a month. Assuming that we're doing that on the weekend, we're looking at, if we run something is going to happen on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, that's $75 a head. If we just do a Saturday, it's $150 a head on top of the $65,000 grant, which is coming anyway. So the whole point about the vessel recruitment is incredibly perplexing. The borders are closed. There's no ability to change harbors right now on the coast of BC. You have your harbor and you're not allowed to move. And if this whole thing is virtual anyway, why do we need the boats in person? And these are important questions. The city, folks in the city want us to be responsible with their money. $28,000 would go a really long way. If people are tired of staying home, let's open up some street closures. Like that's not free either, right? So let's open up some streets and let people have more opportunities to be outside. If we want to support the arts, let's do mural programs, which are enduring and people can look at them all the time and not cluster together. How many emails have we had telling us that it's too crowded in Steveston? This is serious, and we can do better than this. We don't necessarily need to, we can make sure that they're not going to lose their grant money by letting them continue to use in-house services, but we don't need to throw more good money after it.
All right, we'll come back to you on that issue of the amendment. Now, Harold, you still got your hand up. I'll go to Linda McPhail.
I will be supporting the recommendation. I want to thank staff for the Richmond Arts Coalition and Britannia Shipyards National Historic Site Society for the additional information we received over the last couple of days. I found it very informative. Today is the beginning of Tourism Week 2020, a national grassroots initiative that brings attention to the importance of travel and tourism to Canada and British Columbia, but it's a little bit different this year. The tourism industry is also struggling from the impacts of the COVID-19 crisis. All levels of government are encouraging citizens to stay close to home, and I think we have an incredible opportunity at a very small cost to not only support local tourism Richmond, but also our struggling arts community. It would be a shame for the Richmond Arts Coalition to lose their grant. Many local artists depend on this stipend annually. I believe, and we have been reassured, that activities and events can be managed and organized in strict compliance with provincial and city guidelines that would be current during that period. And I think that we have the opportunity to reach a greater number of people through in-person experiences and online opportunities that will be made available. And with regards to marinas, there are many marinas that are open. The Steveston Harbor Authority is open. The Imperial Landing Dock in Steveston is open, and boats have been going there. I'm not saying it's the best idea, but there are many marinas through BC that are open right now. And as Linda Barnes said in her correspondence, and I really like this, RAC encourages council to help Richmond residents move forward in our new normal and give us something to celebrate and enjoy safely. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Bill, Jack, and Carol. Bill?
Thank you, Worship. I had asked staff to come up with a number of questions and I'd like those answers now before I make comment. What were the plans for the boat? What was the timing of this event and implementing? We know now what the timing of the arts festival might be. But does staff have those answers?
Yes.
Do we know what boats we're going to bring in? Are they available? When are they going to come in? When this lifted? I'll let her answer that first.
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, we do not have any boats secured yet. Our next step in this process is to get further council direction on what kind of event that you would like to see for the summer. Following the outcome of tonight, we will be reaching out to other vessels, and we're in regular touch with a lot of the vessel operators, so they are waiting to hear from us. We do anticipate that there will be no boats coming from the U.S. this year. Some of the usual boats that we work with, such as the Adventurous, we know that they're not planning to leave Washington State this year. So that's another reason why we think the budget that we've requested is sufficient for this program. And again, wanting to target boats that are appropriate to the scale of this revised event. In terms of the timing, Linda spoke to that a little bit as well. I think we all agreed, ourselves, RAC and the Britannia Heritage Shipyard Society, that aiming for July felt a bit too soon, that if we look towards August into September, that gives us some more time to plan and to make sure that all of our implementation plan is aligned with provincial directions and also the city's restoring services plan as well. In terms of the timing for the boat, the Richmond Arts Coalition has to deliver their component of the event within 30 days in order to be eligible for the grant. So certainly our intention at this point is to work with them to align the program, and we do want to make sure that it's, there was a desire amongst the Arts Coalition and Britannia that the two events remain connected, that they don't become too split apart. That being said, with the boat component, we are not tied to that 30 days, the way that the arts component would be tied to the 30 days. So depending on availability of boats and so on, we could look at having some of the boats visit outside of that time frame.
The question was asked earlier of the delegation. Could they run their event if they had a Maritime Festival in name only? Has staff considered that?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, yes, we have, and we have discussed it with them. I think in order for them to deliver the event successfully, the arts component, they have indicated that they would, greatly rely on the city's support. So in-kind support within existing resources to help them deliver the event. But their grant is not tied to the $28,000 financial contribution from the city, as was outlined in the memo.
Was there any thought from staff working with our safety? We've done very well in terms of our phasing. Did staff look at our phasing of what is projected of when we're going to be finished and when we're going to move to stage 3, 4, and 5?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we are, like you all, keeping an eye on the phases and when they'll move forward. So that is part of our reluctance to pick a hard timeline right now. Certainly the kind of event that we have envisioned is not in the category of what would be required for that stage 4 of the provincial plan. That would be like a traditional maritime festival, like the World Festival. And, those dates are very uncertain and likely will not be happening this year. So the kind of programming that we've been talking about, it's, we do want to use the festival name, but you have to imagine a very different kind of festival. So something like a mural festival where you tour around and visit all the murals, but it won't be everybody congregating at one spot at the same time. With the provincial health directions, there's a few things about this festival that work in its favor. One is that it's outdoors, which is what we're hearing. And we also have lots of opportunities to create physical distancing, both through geography by spreading the event out and by time spreading the event out, and also making some of the activities available online.
So are you saying this is a phase 5 event?
No, not at all. No.
What phase is it?
This would be, I would see this in our city, the STEP programs that were brought to council in the city. Some of the activations could occur in step 2 and some could occur in step 3.
I guess my concern, Your Worship, thank you for those answers, is to respect our health authorities. They're telling us right now to keep distances, not have groups in, stay at home, don't get too close. This will be a very, very successful event, and I'd like to be realistic. I think we need to support the arts component of it. I think it's very important. But Councillor Green brings up some very good points. Here we are with euphoria, thinking, oh yeah, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. We can't manage Gary Point on a weekend. And if we think we're going to manage something else that's organized where people will come, they're not all Richmondites either. And they're coming down. As they say, people are saying Steveston's too crowded. Gary Point's the same. I think we got to be realistic and support it. It's not the money. We can give them $50,000 if they need it. We need to be cautiously optimistic, Your Worship. And we got to be realistic in that if we can actually pull it off and make it successful. And to me, I have a little bit of concern with the idea of saying, well, we're going to bring boats in, we're going to walk people through, et cetera, et cetera. Groups throughout the world right now are having trouble with people just looking after them. If you have it and you set it up, they will come. There is no question. And it'll be over successful. But can we manage it? And then what does that do for us? People are even questioning just lining up to go into a grocery store now or a drugstore or whatever, and making comment on it. So I guess that everybody else is shut down and we want to start planning something. We're not going to, if we said we were going to do this in September, I'd be quite happy to look at funding to make it very realistic. I don't see this happening before August, to be quite frank with you, with ships in and that kind of thing, because we're going to be severely criticized that those that are walking on the other side of the street when they see you and want to stay away from you. When people come in to our area in the port, is there a 14-day quarantine for them? They're foreigners as far as I'm concerned. They've traveled. If they come down from Prince Rupert, a boat comes in, whatever, is that ruled in? I don't know that. And I think it's a very, very interesting question, to be quite frank with you. So I guess I'm mixed on this one. I will support any arts component of it to see that they can get on with it and do it. So a strong support of the arts. I don't know that we need boats to do that, and to organize something for people to see. They're already walking the dikes in 3s to 7s and 8s and 9s and cycling the dikes. So my question is I'm not sure yet where I'm going to stand on this one, but I will definitely support the arts, and I would definitely support item number 1, even if we limited the Maritime Festival. Yeah.
All right, just before we go to check, Marie, just remind us of the timeline for this.
The timeline for the event itself?
Yes.
Yeah, we haven't selected a date yet. Pending after tonight's discussion and decision, we'll have a meeting with the Arts Coalition in Britannia, and we'll start targeting a date. We did discuss late August into September as a general guideline, but knowing that we're going to have to remain flexible for a little while yet.
Is it going to happen in July?
No.
All right.
Your Worship, can we put a date on it then? If we pass this, we put a date on it that it'll be held in September?
We have the assurance of staff and former Councillor Barnes. It's not going to happen in July. So I'm going to go to check out.
Supportive of this motion, and I think after being asked to stay home for very long, I think people are expecting to have something to re-energize themselves, or even have some kind of celebration. It's good that we don't have a fixed date that it has to be in July. We can be more flexible so that we can adjust the kind of program that we can have, and also the number of people that we can allow. And I have confidence in staff in crowd control. I think we can develop different kinds of methods, right, to limit the number of people at different spots for different programs. maybe, giving out tickets, and once the tickets, you don't have a ticket, you cannot go inside. So I think, we can manage with the number of people, and hopefully by then, we can have the ban on mass gathering be lifted. And in particular, I'm very supportive of the arts component of the program. And as being mentioned by the delegation, that the artist community has been negatively impacted by the pandemic. And I mean, we Chinese are saying, opportunity and crisis come together. So when there's a crisis, we can always find some new ways to carry on or even to get better. And I trust and faith, in our arts community that they can be very creative, they can be very innovative in order to overcome the obstacles that they have in front of them. And as I mentioned earlier, if this is being done right, perhaps it could be the biggest event ever. Because in the past, we have the physical limitation. People can only come physically to attend the event and the concerts and other kinds of performance. But now we can actually go online. And there's no limit. Not only people in Richmond, it can be in the Lower Mainland and many other places. So with the creativity of the artist, I am sure that this could be a big success. And we have seen examples elsewhere, right? So this kind of online virtual program could go a long way. So I would expect that this to be the most successful and well-attended event ever created by our arts community. Thank you for doing this.
Okay, before I go to Carol, Bill, your hand is still up and your mic is not muted. So, Councillor Day.
First of all, I wanted to thank Ms. Fenwick for the memo that we got today. This is great. It says here that if approved, staff plan to provide in-kind support for the Richmond Art Association for this program, including access to city facilities, parks, marketing support, and assistance for planning and coordination. And that staff will ensure that any program is aligned with council-approved plan to restore city services and emerging health authority direction. So that kind of says it all for me. I did have a question though, like generally maritime festivals have boats, but we don't have to allow access to those boats. And we certainly don't have to allow interaction between the crew and the public. In fact, they could be completely segregated. Do you imagine that we could have multiple locations, like the end of 3 Road Dock, Britannia, maybe out at Gary Point, like that? The boats don't have to be clustered together. Is that right?
Your worship, to Councillor Day, yes. Yes, the boats can be spread out geographically, and again, spread out by time, different boats on different weekends. One option might be boat viewing from the land. Another option could be walking the docks at Britannia or Imperial, and perhaps walking on board the decks of the boats, again, depending where we are in the restoration of services plan.
Okay. And, just to add to that, just through the chair, I have a couple of kayaks. If I decide to go to the Maritime Festival, I'll probably put my kayaks in the water and sail around and see them from well over 6 feet away and from a more interesting perspective. So I agree with Councillor Au that if we do this right, we could make a made in Richmond solution that would give us the ability to follow the rules that the province and the federal government have set out, but absolutely get creative. I mean, I myself have been out for long walks in deserted areas and haven't seen another soul. So it is possible to social distance successfully. So I'm happy to hear that we can put the boats in different direction, but I do feel that a scaled down version, I mean, obviously this is not the $250,000 event we normally have, it's $28,000. So, but I had a question. It was brought up earlier that ships aren't allowed to sail outside of their home dock. How would you manage that?
Through your worship, to Councillor Day, we will ensure that anything that we do is under the guidelines of the time. I should also mention that, like any other event, this will be subject to the REACT process. So it will be subject to the scrutiny of Coastal Health and the RCMP. So we'll make sure that any emerging direction is followed.
I think it's, thank you through the chair. I think it's wise to have city involvement because while, you know, the Richmond Art Coalition is certainly experienced in doing art events, I think that the component that staff bring forward with the very close connection with the provincial, you know, powers that be will make sure that this is going to work out. And I think the comment was brought up earlier of having tickets. I like that idea that, you know, once it's full, that's it. You can't come in. I'm sorry. You can watch it on your, you know, your iPad, or, you know, we can put it on a screen, or maybe we have little TVs where, you know, some, you know, video students are videotaping the boats. So really get creative with this. And what this really takes me back to is I have long been worried about these large scale major events that we've been spending over $1 million a year on. This gives us the opportunity to learn how to do community-based events, how to create a smaller footprint and a smaller event that can technically get out to more people because through social media. So I'm excited. I think this is an opportunity for us to do a, you know, break the mold and do a made in Richmond solution to the pandemic, you know, that we're dealing with right now. So good luck and have fun with it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wolf.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll be very brief here. I'll just mention that a number of Richmond residents with young families typically have always said that the Maritime Festival has been their favorite, and they would like it to be on multiple weekends in case they miss it that time of year. So I think this is going to be suitable to many, even if you can't get in the limited number. I'm sure the kind of overflow areas or just the excitement before and after that event and the ships being nearby will definitely provide opportunities for more than the 50. I also hope some can take advantage of some of the technology that's available. You can use some free software and get 360 views. Just like people are looking at when they look to buy a house or something, you can set up a way that you do the 360 view inside of it. I think on top of many of these ships and the amount of work that people have put into them, it would be a loss for them not to do that. And again, that would just broaden the reach of people finding interest in the heritage that's preserved in the maritime culture. And with that, I'm going to wait to hear what Councillor Green's amendment is. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go back to Councillor Green. You had a motion to amend.
Motion to amend. We remove the city portion of the funding, but allow them to still use the name Maritime Festival so that they can access the grant money.
All right, before I ask for a seconder, so it would be basically that second option we laid out, that the Maritime Festival be approved without budget for 2020. So you're amending it to read that way?
Correct.
All right. That's moved. Is that seconded?
Second.
All right. So it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion on it?
Yep.
First of all, I've got Councillor Steves. Well, first of all, Councillor Green, did you have anything further to say?
Yeah, I wanted to say that I think it's important that we allow our community groups to be able to function in a way that gets them their grant money that they've already been approved for, but there's just too many unknowns. The answer to question after question is we don't know, we think, we could, we don't know, maybe. I mean, it's not, there's not enough information to be able to go forward with that. And Steveston is too crowded. Like we all get the same emails. Email after email is too crowded. To think that we can do crowd control when we're making an attraction is hubris. There's no other word for it. I don't know if any of you have been in Steveston on foot or by bike on the weekends, or even on a sunny day. It's crazy. So I'd really urge you not to put so much weight on this that we end up getting a disaster. Thank you.
All right, I've got Councillor Steves and Councillor Liu and Councillor Wolf. Councillor Wolf. Harold?
Okay. Yeah, I'm very much opposed to the amendment. I think that what we're proposing is a rather exciting thing to be doing in the midst of the COVID-19 event. Effectively, we're providing some activities for our people so that they can get out, get some fresh air, and enjoy our waterfront and enjoy some of the things that we would want to put forward. The only way you're going to do it, if you take the funding away, then who's going to put up, say, a snow fence around the stage that the arts people would set up? Who's going to pay for the commissionaires? Who's going to deal with it? We really do need to put that funding up, because then you really will get the crowds and it's uncontrolled. The reason we've got a problem at Gary Point Park right now is we don't have enough people down there to control it. But if you set it up the way we did, say, with the Kiowa Maru, where Gary Point was fenced off, you can control how many people go in. You simply do the same thing at the Britannia. You control how many people go in. You've got your commissionaires, you've got the RCMP, and then you've got volunteers as well, although the volunteers won't be able to deal with the public as has been stated. I think it's really, really important that we provide events like this, and I'm really sickened to hear that we will try and put a damper on it. The other aspect of it, in terms of the vessels and that, there's no problem getting vessels. 20 years ago, we had a fish boat event. We've got enough boats in Steveston Harbor to line up on the docks. And so people go single file or in family groups along the docks. You don't have to get on board. The Providence is a halibut schooner. You need a seine boat, you need a gill netter, you need a trawler. The Eva, which is an antique one from up at Finn Slough, so you don't need to bring people. I wouldn't mind bringing a whole pile of vessels from Victoria, because that's where most of the ones that go to Port Townsend are located, are in Victoria. But these are things we can do, and it opens up our parks to a controlled event. What's happening at Gary Point right now and at other parks is uncontrolled, and people are ignoring us because there's nothing else to do but huge crowds to go down there and wander around in the park. This way, if they have to sit within their circle and only people can only come in when some people leave, then I think it can be very well controlled. So I really would urge people to support it. We're allowing the patios now, and this is no different than setting up a patio along Moncton Street and all the restaurants on Moncton Street and Bayview. There's absolutely no difference. And in terms of the distancing amongst groups and events can be just the same as the distance between restaurants. So I don't really see what the problem is.
Okay, we now have Councillor Liu, then Councillor Wolf, Councillor Au.
Thank you, Worship. I won't be supporting the amendment. I don't think it's fair to be punishing Britannia Shipyards and the Arts Coalition because we're in early stages. I think I'm very positive that they're going to be able to work with staff and to be able to work with the new rules as they come along to create something really special. I think it's important that we activate and educate the waterfront and that we have programs for families and for people. And I really find it really strange that, you know, we're ready to nitpick over 28,000 when a few months back, you know, some of the same people were voting for $40 million to redo the Phoenix when there wasn't a real plan there either. So, you know, to argue that these guys don't have a plan, it's like, of course they don't have a plan. The rules aren't in place yet of what to do. You know, they're developing, and it's amazing how our staff's been able to jump on it and create the correct plan, just as we've done for opening up our recreational facilities and that sort of thing. They've done very thoughtful, organized, planned, in coordination with Vancouver Coastal Health. I think they have the capability to then work with the Arts Coalition, Britannia Shipyards, and the like to put on something special that will be safe at Britannia here for the Richmond Maritime Festival.
Okay, Harold, you've still got your hand up. Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, just a quick question to staff, or two quick questions. If the full amount of the 28,000 is not used, it will get returned to the rate stabilization account. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, that's correct.
And then I'm aware of in our past city events, we've had the Green Ambassadors, which is a youth-led initiative to help do waste control. Would that be in place in both situations, or only with the approved city funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, I think that would be dependent on what size this festival ends up being. Again, depending on where we are in the restoration of services spectrum. The vision is for it to be more like a program, more spread out, more people coming and going. So we would certainly ensure that recycling services were available, and we would tailor them to whatever the scale of the program was.
And to follow up, would that be through the worship to staff? Would that be in place either way, with the 28,000 or without?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, yes, it would.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just my final comment here is that it's a little bit unclear to myself what it would look like with or without. But I am leaning towards providing the city funding to go along with these events, just as this area is already quite heavily, I think, invested by the city and has a need for to be the attraction that it is. So yeah, I think if anything, what we could commit this amount, and then if the phases go backwards, and maybe the money will go backwards too. Thanks.
Councillor Howe.
My understanding is that the staff is given the permission to use up to $20,000 for the programs. And they can be very flexible. They can adjust the size, the scale, and the number of programs according to the situation. We are not forcing them to spend all the money. And with the budget being approved, I think they can have more autonomy to make things happen. And if we take away the money, I think that would be negative as well to the arts components of the festival. So just to have the festival in name only without any support, I think that's not the way it should be. And also, I don't want to compare one program to the other program, but on the other hand, you know, we have approved, if I'm not mistaken, $40,000 for the farmers market or farm festival at Garden Steel Land. So I think in terms of the program itself, I think probably the Maritime Festival would have more flexibility, a longer length of time, and many more programs, because the Farm Festival is only one-day event, right? And if we approve that, so I hope that we can also approve the certain amount, right, which is $28,000 in this case for the Maritime Festival. So I won't support the amendment.
Just as a point of clarification, the Farm Fest, the original city-approved funding was $40,000. We were going to leave $10,000 in the kitty to use for farmers markets. That's been increased to $20,000. So it started off at $40,000, which is your point. All right, I'm going to call the question then on this, on the motion to amend to delete the budgeted amount of $28,000. All those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, the only party in favor is Councillor Green. So that is defeated. Then I've got to call the question on the entire motion, which is to use the Richmond Maritime Festival and a budget of $28,000. All those in favor? Any opposed? It is carried with nobody opposed. All right, that takes us on the agenda to item number 12. This comes out of the GP Special General Purposes Committee meeting this afternoon. It's the agricultural signage review and consultation. Recommendation is that the staff report entitled Agricultural Sign Review and Consultation from the General Manager of Community Safety dated May 14, 2020 be received for information. Secondly, that the communication plan described in that staff report be endorsed, and that staff be directed to continue working with the Richmond farmers to retain legacy signs that meet safety requirements to promote agricultural activities. And I would so move.
Second.
So it's moved and seconded. On this report, the report outlines how there was an issue last year with W&A Farms. That has been resolved this year. Staff has basically concluded that the sign bylaw is adequate for the purposes that we need it, and that staff will continue to work with the farmers on the legacy signs, the signs that they've had for years, and work towards compliance, but in any case be flexible in that regard. So I will be supporting this. Councillor Day.
I will also be supporting this because I think it's important that we support our farming community. And having said that, while the signs are important for that 30 days that the crop is being harvested, I wanted to point out that on our GP7, Food Security Society, Richmond Eats, the local eating guide, which has a map to showcase local foods in Richmond. And it includes many of the farm stands that we're actually talking about protecting for signs. So I would like to have that report added to the minutes of this item, because I think it's important that people recognize that we can support farms in many ways. And one of them is getting that map and that information out to the general public, in addition to the signs. So it's a friendly amendment. I'm hoping we can add that to the minutes.
I don't think we would normally attach that as to the minutes. What we can do is we'll ask staff to get it out and to circulate it to all the councillors. Okay, Councillor McNulty, your microphone is still on. With that, I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Brings us to our next item, which is the expedited temporary patios for restaurants, cafes, and pubs. And the motion is recommended. Council endorse the program to facilitate creation of temporary patios as described in the staff report. This is all in the coming from the the General Privileges Committee, which would include the delegation of authority to the General Manager of Engineering Public Works to approve and execute temporary license agreements permitting the temporary use and occupation of city-owned property, including portions of sidewalks, highways, for the purpose of operating a temporary patio. Secondly, the temporary suspension of enforcement of the minimum on-site vehicle parking requirements specified in our zoning bylaws and that would continue until the sooner of November 1st or until the council resolution to cancel it. And thirdly, that the temporary suspension of enforcement of the requirements to obtain a heritage alteration permit within the Steveston Village Heritage Conservation Area to the extent any temporary patio created under the program would otherwise require such a permit. That's suspended until November 1st or a council resolution. And that one pre-approval is provided to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch for all individual requests, and staff provide regular updates on the number of applications and report back to council at the conclusion of the program, and I would so move. We discussed this again at the afternoon General Purposes Committee meeting this afternoon. This has been talked about a lot in the media, and other cities are looking at it as well. But basically what it is, allow the restaurants, pubs, cafes, the ability to have a temporary use of the area outside their premises for a patio. There's certain parking requirements that have to be relaxed. And to the extent this happens in Steveston, so long as it's not a permanent alteration, they don't need to get a heritage alteration permit for this temporary use. And also, rather than every restaurant or pub wanting to expand their liquor license, we would give, one pre-approval for all of them. So that's the basic scenario. And again, I'll certainly support it. So I've got Councillor McPhail, Councillor Green, Councillor Steves.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thanks staff for getting this ready so quickly so that we can support the business community. I've been speaking with a couple of restaurants, and they said that even with reopening at reduced capacity, they're going to have trouble breaking even. Having the opportunity to have a patio may give them more revenue that will get them to break even or small profits. So a great idea, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Green.
Thank you. I just had a couple questions of staff. How many businesses are in process now trying to get a patio with respect to the pandemic response?
Through the chair to Councillor Green, we've had inquiries from 4 or 5 restaurants, but there has been no process yet. We hope to start in the morning.
I imagine that they're very eager as well. I know that I've connected a couple restaurants with staff, and the restaurant owners have been very complimentary, but definitely wanting the process to get going. So, and I just wanted to express my thanks to staff. I know that this came forward only last week, and you're already turning it around and getting it back out the door. So, well done. Thank you.
Councillor Steves.
Thank you. The last time I was in Halifax, I found that most of the restaurants in Halifax have sidewalk patios, and that's because Halifax's economy is based largely upon students from other parts of Canada and probably other parts of the world living there and wanting something to do in the evening aside from studying. Basically what you did, you walked down the street and then you came to the patio, you walked around it where the car would normally park and go back on the sidewalk and continue on. What's important, however, is that in light of the fact we're dealing with COVID-19, each patio should have some kind of rail or fence around it so people aren't walking through amongst the tables. And that's what they had in Halifax. They were actually had wooden rail fences around the patio, and you literally were encouraged to walk around. I think this would be a really good experience for us if we're dealing with the previously discussed events at the Britannia shipyard. Is how do you manage people to make sure that you don't have a big crowd coming in around Britannia Shipyard Park, and I think it's probably by putting fences up, and we'll learn that with the patio. It'll be up to the managers of the restaurant to make sure that there are distances within the patio and that people aren't piled up inside the patio area and aren't lined up in crowds outside the patio area. As Councillor Green has mentioned, Steveston is a very popular place to be, and we could end up with a lot of people standing in the street waiting to get in. So we'll have to see how we can monitor that. But I think it's a great idea to get people out again and get people circulating without creating a problem vis-a-vis the virus itself.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Your Worship. Well, first I want to thank Councillor Green for bringing this forward. This was an excellent idea, and we've seen it be successful in Vancouver, and I don't see any reason why it can't be successful right here in Richmond. I think that this opens the door for creative ways for us to support our local businesses, because these outdoor patios are going to allow for radiant propane heaters, which will make it comfortable. And while the resolution basically ends November 1st, you never know. Maybe this will lead to bigger and greater things. And while it doesn't allow for tents, these restaurants can have very, very large umbrellas. So I see people enjoying gathering in these places, and if it can support the local businesses. But what's really interesting is while we're trying to deal with the right now and how can we support these businesses, during the General Purposes Committee meeting, this led to 4 motions. One was that expanded road closures for other businesses. Another was for other business to be able to expand bike parking, additional bike parking, and angled parking on Chatham. So this one issue has opened our eyes to even more great ideas, and who knows where those referrals will go. But I was really proud of council for working together and coming up with ways that we can support our local businesses. So I'll wholeheartedly be supporting this and kind of secretly hope it gets extended. So thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
All right, Councilor McNulty. Bill, your mute's on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be definitely supporting this. I think this is a great move in the right direction and puts us on par with many other cities that, I think the point has to be made, Your Worship, it is not just Steveston. This applies to all of Richmond and wherever they can and have a patio and or parking stalls and or sidewalks if they want to come up with something creative. I think that's important, although obviously Steveston has taken the lead in this. The other thing too, Your Worship, is with that referral that I made this afternoon with regard to extending the courtesy to all businesses that want to come out and use the sidewalks in terms of whether it be a sidewalk sale, put a wagon out there or expand their businesses to the street area. And it could lead to where we shut off streets down the road for a period of time, just like we did on Canada Day many times in Steveston, where we shut off from number 1 road to 7th Avenue. So it's I think it has tremendous implications, and I think it's up to the businesses to be creative and come to us with suggestions, especially those that are not restaurants. I think that there are others. How can they use the space? How can they use it for a sale or whatever they're going to do, and come up with it and allow us to come up with some guidelines for them. I hope that referral comes back very soon. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm supportive of this motion, and I think it's a good idea. And actually, I'm very excited about this. This is something new to me because, from where I come from, which is Hong Kong, with this kind of a patio or sidewalk setup, is not new at all. But I have a few questions for staff. I want to know what would be the process for approving any restaurant or shops for this kind of setup? For example, right? Would you just approve it whenever you receive an application, or there are certain guidelines or certain criteria that you have to meet? And for example, this one particular point in question is, if the next store, the shop next door, said that I don't like it, it affects my business, how would we handle that? So what's the process of giving the approval?
Through the chair to Councillor Au. First of all, the patios are only allowed either on their own property or on the sidewalk directly adjacent to their business. So the businesses won't be allowed to encroach their patio in front of other businesses. In fact, it's almost like that space will be reserved for each fronting business. When a business requesting a patio is as a tenant in a multi-tenanted building, we require approval from the property owner for the patio space, because we need to leave it up to patio owners to property owners, my apologies, to determine how the space is going to be used, because we don't want to get into a situation where the city is the ones working between business owners. We want the property owners to do that. In the case of a business owner not affected because it's not on their property and not in front, I think we would have to pay attention to what exactly they were complaining about and make sure that we attend to that. So whether the cones are out properly, the area is properly marked off, we would look to see what the core issues of what they're complaining about.
Yeah, exactly. I think we have to think it through because, even though you said that, this is only in front of the shop that's going to set up the patio, I think the neighbor might have a different opinion, and they can feel that they're being negatively affected. My second question is, yes, we're talking about mainly about Stevenson, but how about the other areas? For example, right now, I think not too many people know that we are talking about this or we are thinking of doing this. But once this is becoming public, I would imagine that, in a city like Richmond, with so many restaurants all over, and places such as, Alexandra Road, even, the example of Canby Plaza, I think there could be a huge number of applications. So again, how can we deal with it?
Sorry, could you just repeat the last part of the question?
So how can we deal with it? We deal with the large number of applications.
Oh.
I can imagine that just on the street of Alexandra Road, there are over 100 restaurants. And if all those restaurants come to say, we want that, so how can staff handle that?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, I think that, it's a good point. If everybody comes in tomorrow, we will struggle. However, I think that we will see the application spaced out a bit. We have designed this application process and worked very hard to preserve this as a simple process. And you do have to meet criteria, which are the criteria are easily determined, and then you get approval. This isn't like a permit process where plans have to be reviewed or, technical requirements have to be debated. These are checkbox type requirements, and we've made it very simple on purpose. And I think that also speaks to the temporary nature of it. Some of the questions you asked are questions we don't know right now, and we won't know until we go through this. And that's part of why it's important that this is just temporary, and that, we figure out how popular it is, what the demands are, what the problems are, before anything permanent is put in place.
Yes, that's why I would suggest that staff be aware of this. There could be an influx of applications, and perhaps staff should think about how to reallocate manpower to deal with it. I think this is going to be very popular, and once people know that this is allowable in the city, not just restaurants, the other shops may ask for the same thing, and probably it will change the face of Richmond in a way, right? So we can have many outdoor business events in the city from now onwards. So be prepared.
All right, Bill, you need to mute your mic and your hand is still up. I'm going to call the question then on this motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay, so that is carried. That brings us to public announcements. From closed council this afternoon, council approves the flexible use of 2020 city grants due to the impact of COVID-19 and related public health measures on the community and nonprofit societies. June 1st to 7th is going to be Seniors Week. For those aged 55 years and above, and their families, as well as the seniors, are invited to participate in 13 virtual and fun activities beginning next week. This is the opportunity to celebrate the contributions made by seniors throughout the city. So for a full list of activities, details and links, go to the Richmond website /SeniorsWeek. Now, we've been talking throughout this meeting about the restoring of services. Last Wednesday, the city began restoring services and access to some outdoor amenities as part of our program and service restoration plan. Multi-step process is based on a cautious and staged approach to reopening many of the amenities, facilities, and programs closed since the pandemic. So now for limited use, we have the basketball, volleyball courts, the bike and skate parks, the outdoor lacrosse box, and the sports field for passive recreational use. This week, we'll reopen the indoor tennis courts and the pitch and putt. There's going to be limits on the use of these amenities, and we encourage everyone to adhere to the limits to protect public safety. So go to the city website and get more information. Then this year, we're still going to have doors open, but it's going to be online. The Richmond Museum Society, in partnership with the city, is again presenting Doors Open. This time, because of the pandemic, all such Doors Open will be online with unique and special virtual tours, the Fire Hall, the Buddhist Temple, Richmond RCMP, and many more. So go to the website richmondmuseum.ca for all the details. Then property taxes. Residents and businesses will begin to receive their annual tax notices this week. The reduced tax increase for 2020 was 2%, and it was implemented, and we implemented other measures to keep important city programs and services operating during the challenging time. A reminder that taxes are due on July 2nd. Because of the hardship experienced by many, we won't have a penalty on late payment until September 30th. But we do ask that people, if they can, pay their taxes on time, because that's how we keep the city going. Then we have the Quanland Street Market. The farmers market is back every Tuesday from noon till 4 from now through October. This is a food-only essential service market operating at Brighouse Park, and that enables better physical distancing. So we have all the services, the washing stations, the contactless payments, and all the other safety measures in place. And finally, we are Richmond, BC. To support local businesses and the community, the city has partnered with Tourism Richmond and Richmond Chamber to create a new online hub to build awareness and encourage people to be part of the local economy and community. So look to richmondbc.ca for more information. So with that, Madam Clerk, let's see, bylaws for adoption.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are 2 bylaws for final adoption with no noted opposition.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, anybody? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the development permit, the development permit now.
Thank you, Your Worship. There is the following recommendation for council. Recommendation 1, that the minutes of the development permit panel meeting held on April 29th and May 13th and the chair's report for the development permit panel meetings held on January 29th be received for information, and that the recommendation of the panel to authorize the issuance of a development permit for the property at 7811 Alderbridge Way be endorsed and the permit so issued.
So is that moved?
So moved.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Councilor Wolf. No, Councilor Wolf.
Oh, great, thank you. Your Worship, I have a few questions of staff. I wasn't on council at the time this was originally brought forward, so just a few questions, if you will. First of all, I know I'm a little nitpicky here. It says in the report, page council 114, it says that almost all the dwelling units will have basic universal housing features, and somewhere else it said 95%. I'm just curious, why did we not push for the 100, or is there, what is it that didn't make those few units fully universal?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, 349 of the 368 units are basic universal housing units. The basic universal housing program is a voluntary program, so it is up to the developer to elect to provide them. We do ensure that if affordable housing units are provided, that those do meet the basic universal housing criteria as they do in this development.
Okay, all right, thanks. Another follow-up there is they were approved for a variance to not have the large loading space, and I think I read somewhere else, this was 115, but somewhere else it said that meets, for them to have more medium loading spaces, that meets the Richmond requirement. If this does, then maybe we don't need to make it a requirement. If big areas of space are being used for loading, which is, I don't know how common it would be in a facility like this. If it's not necessary, why don't, would staff recommend we remove the need for the large loading space?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, in terms of the zoning bylaw requirements for loading, it is something that our transportation department does pay attention to and is monitoring. In terms of this specific development and the variance, it is really based on the form of development. There is very limited commercial space in this mixed-use development. It's less than 3,000 square feet of commercial, which does derive a significant loading factor in most mixed-use developments. With the size of the apartments, we do not envision that somebody will need to back a WB17, which is the large semi-trailer truck, up to move into an apartment.
Great, that'll make this a better use of space. I got two more short ones. I was looking on the Riva website, which is this approval is part of this large complex known as Riva, R-I-V-A. And on there, they claim that the units in this building are going to have over height ceilings. Are you able to speak to that, or are they over height as in beyond the variance, or?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I can't speak to how the developer is marketing their project. In terms of the development, it does comply with the maximum height established in the city center area plan. I suspect what it is that they are larger than the interior heights are greater than 8 feet, which is why they are saying that they are larger.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. And my last one, at the time this was brought forward, it was to be LEED or LEED silver, which is the bare minimum requirement from the city. What does that translate to as for step code again?
It would be difficult, through your worship to Councillor Wolf, it would be difficult for me to specify which step. I would say it would be likely step 2. I would note, however, that the development is going to connect to the Oval Village District Energy Utility.
Yes, I did read that in the report, and I'm just curious, like noticing that this developer actually has a person on staff who is their sustainability coordinator, who has passive house consultation qualifications. Have we been seeking to bring this to a higher standard? Have we?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, we always strive with every development for them to be as high and energy efficient and include as many sustainability options as possible. What we find generally is the constraint at this time is the procurement process of some of the materials that are required to achieve those higher steps in the step code.
Okay, well, yeah, I see a number of similar developments to this in the Metro Vancouver area that are actually going to the passive house, and from my viewings of the artist rendition of the building, looks very similar to this, and they're going beyond the step 2, 3, 4, taking it right to passive house. So I'm not going to oppose this development at this time, but just keep it in consideration. We're still looking for that high benchmark in our city. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment. We are now adjourned.